Part 1. The golden ticket that no one gets. Hey there, good to see you again. In our last talk, we went over countries like the Philippines, Cuba, and Panama, places that actually had a chance to join the United States, but chose their own identity instead. They decided that being their own boss was better than being a second-class citizen in a superpower. After that, I saw so many comments saying, "Man, I wish my country could become part of the United States." It's not a new sentiment historically. Tons of nations have tried to get under that American umbrella. But here's the cold, hard truth. Just because you want to join doesn't mean the United States wants you. There were countries willing to hand over their entire sovereignty, only to be rejected or completely ignored. Today, let's look at the strict criteria the United States uses to say yes or no, and the stories of those who got their hearts broken. Part 2. The 3 types of rejection. The countries that tried to join the United States were mostly nearby neighbors in Central America, like the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, and Haiti. Even the Yucatan Republic, which briefly broke away from Mexico, tried its luck. But it goes beyond the Americas. Even Sicily and Albania in Europe, and Liberia in Africa, once dreamed of becoming part of the United States. The way the United States handled these marriage proposals fell into 3 buckets. First, there are the ones the United States seriously considered and even signed treaties with, but then dumped at the altar, like the Dominican Republic. Second, there are the ones where the United States listened for a second, but then walked away because it looked too risky, like Liberia and Albania. And third, there's the unrequited love category, where the people in those countries were desperate to join, but the United States didn't even acknowledge their existence. Places like Sicily, Nicaragua, and Haiti fall right into that lonely group. Part 3. The Dominican Republic. Land yes, people no. Let's dive into the most dramatic one. The Dominican Republic in 1869, right after the Civil War. Their president actually begged the United States to annex the whole country because they were broke, haunted by civil war, and scared of European invasions. President Ulysses S. Grant was actually sold on the idea. He saw it as a strategic naval base in the Caribbean, and even thought it could be a place to relocate. Freed Black Americans to ease racial tensions at home. The Grant administration actually signed an annexation treaty and sent it to the Senate. It looked like the Dominican Republic was about to become a new state. But then, the Senate killed it. Why? It wasn't about the land, it was about the people. The politicians back then were terrified that if they took the land, they'd have to give millions of non-white residents United States citizenship and voting rights. The racial wall was just too high for the United States to climb back then. Part 4. The Yucatan's desperate gamble and the Yucatan War. Next up is the Yucatan Republic in 1848. They had declared independence from Mexico, but things went south fast. The Maya people rose up in what's called the Caste War, and the white elites in Yucatan were about to be wiped out. In a total Hail Mary move, they sent a letter to the United States, saying, "If you send your army to save us, you can have our entire sovereignty." The United States government actually sat down and thought about it. The location was amazing, right between the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. A bill even passed the House of Representatives to send troops, but once again, the Senate put on the brakes. They saw Yucatan as a poisoned chalice. Taking it meant the United States would have to inherit a brutal, expensive war that might never end. While the United States hesitated, Yucatan collapsed and was eventually swallowed back up by Mexico. It proves a clear rule: if the cost of the gift is higher than the profit, the United States will walk away every time. Part 5. Liberia and the Abandoned Experiment. Even countries made by the United States weren't guaranteed a spot. Look at Liberia. In the early 19th century, the United States didn't want to live with freed Black Americans, but also didn't want to make them slaves again. So, they bought land in West Africa and moved them there. These settlers called themselves Americans, used a flag and constitution, modeled after the United States, and even named their capital Monrovia. after President James Monroe. They fully expected to be officially adopted by the United States eventually. But the United States was cold. They didn't want to get tangled up in African colonial conflicts or deal with land disputes between the settlers and local tribes. So, in 1847, Liberia was forced to declare independence just to get a formal title, to protect themselves from other European powers. The United States basically built the house but refused to let the family inside, leading to tragic civil wars decades later. Part 6. Sicily's American Fever and Cold War Reality. The weirdest case might be Sicily in 1943. When the United States military landed and kicked out the fascists, the locals were so tired of poverty and war that they saw the Americans as literal saviors. A massive movement started to make Sicily the 49th state. They even sent letters to the military government and waved United States flags with an extra star on the streets. Even the mafia was in on it because they were scared that if Italy went communist, they'd lose everything. But the United States had zero interest. Why? Because taking Sicily would have made every single Italian person hate the United States. If the United States stole Sicily, Italy would have run straight into the arms of the Soviet Union. In the high-stakes game of the Cold War, losing all of Italy just to get one island was a terrible deal. So, the United States told Sicily no and just gave them a bit more autonomy within Italy instead. Part 7. The modern no-entry list and the reality of power. So, what's the final takeaway? The United States doesn't just expand on a whim. To get in, you have to be an irreplaceable military asset like Hawaii, be culturally identical like Texas was, and be the right size. Today, the biggest reason the United States says no is population. The United States is a federal system, so if a huge new area joins, the entire power map changes. More people means more seats in the House and more electoral votes. Existing states don't want their power diluted. This is exactly why Puerto Rico, with just 3.2 million people, still isn't a state. It would flip the political balance. And regarding the recent Canada talk, it's a total bluff. Canada has 40 million people and leans very progressive. If they joined the United States, they would instantly become the biggest power player, and the Republican Party would likely never win a national election again. It's a poison apple. These days, the United States prefers allies over states because allies are cheap while citizens are expensive. The map isn't growing anytime soon, and that's just the cold math of the United States.